The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
Oh, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box on CNBC. You're watching the show with Arabina Gamede and myself, Steve Sedgwick. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I better get to the headlines because I'm due to do that at this time. These are your headlines. So, disappointment over profit margins wipes nearly $200 billion off Nvidia's market cap. But the Dow powers higher, notching its 25th record close of the year. The data was encouraging from the GDP front and jobless claims out of the United States, just easing some of those growth fears you all got so worried about at the start of August. It reinforced market expectations, though, for a Fed rate cut in September.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris sits down for her first interview since securing the Democratic nomination, saying Americans are ready to turn the page on Donald Trump.
We have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans.
Apple and Nvidia reportedly discussed joining OpenAI's latest funding round in a deal that would value the ChatGPT maker above $100 billion.
How does it feel, everybody? You all okay? Because, you've had a bit of a wobble on Nvidia this week, but we survived, didn't we? We spent ages talking about it in advance about, is Nvidia bigger than the payroll? Is Nvidia bigger than the inflation picture as well? And look, what did we have? We had brilliant numbers from Nvidia, no doubt about it. Someone want to argue with me about that? By all means try. But they were fantastic figures, reaffirming the fact that this is a very special stock. And the fact of the matter is, yes, the S&P had a bit of a wobble this week so far. Yes, the Nasdaq's down a bit, but the Dow, as I mentioned, powering to its 25th record high. I know a lot of you don't like the Dow, and I understand why. But the fact of the matter is, you survived. So well done. Should we round the circle on this one? Well, Nvidia shares, they closed Thursday session down nearly 6.5%. Yes, it wiped off some nearly $200 billion of market cap. It beat on the top and bottom lines, but failed to impress some. Did it really fail to impress anyone? Genuinely, were you failed to impress out there? This was about market positioning. You know it, I know it. Anyway, despite what the scribes are writing and what I'm reading here, it was about market positioning. Anyway, apparently some people were failed to impress because they wanted even more out of the so-called whisper numbers in the quarterly results from the AI darling. Well, the stock decline weighed on the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq, as I mentioned. Nvidia shares, nevertheless, are still up. You're all okay if you had them, all right, don't worry. They're still up more than 140% year to date. It says market comment on Nvidia. I might have already done it.
Just a little bit.
Didn't realise that bit was coming. Shows me about reading the rundown. No, but the fact of the matter is, look, it is without doubt the most important stock in the market at the moment. I want someone to argue with me that it's not. I think in terms of the zeitgeist, you over longer term, you might pick Aramco. Over the longer term, you might say TSMC because it is the most important fab in the world, without which the world will struggle to exist. There are other stocks out there as well. You might say Novo Nordisk is fascinating because of semaglutide and what they're doing as well. But the truth of the matter is, at the moment, if there's one stock that captures the imagination of the most recent rally, it is without doubt Nvidia. And it had a wobble. I think it was about market positioning. I think it was about traveling and arriving and this extraordinary rally you can see on the screen there, ladies and gentlemen. Others think it failed to impress. Let's agree to differ on this one as well. The truth of the matter is, the market, yes, it's down, but it wasn't catastrophic by and large for your portfolio, the fact that Nvidia's had a downtick.
I mean, ultimately here you look at a company that, had been growing extraordinarily, right, on a quarter-on-quarter basis, 122% up then on a revenue basis then year on year. I mean, that's still astronomical, but I suppose the thing here is that cannot always be maintained. So once you begin to see a dip in that, Is that now cause for concern when your demand picture is still pretty much intact then for the biggest market leader ultimately in this AI picture? As we've consistently said, Nvidia is the one making money out of artificial intelligence already, while the others are the ones spending on artificial intelligence at this point in time. The supply chain is the one perhaps in question here for Nvidia. But even that creates a bigger demand picture overall, allowing them to perhaps charge a little bit more. So not much has really changed, I would think, on a fundamental basis. So I tend to agree that positioning is the issue.
There are more outrageously priced stocks out there today and in history. So just I'm not saying it's good value. I don't buy or sell stocks, as you know. But I'm just looking at the investor reaction, the economist reaction, the analyst reaction, and every single one of them pretty much are upping their targets afterwards. I'll talk you through one or two, because why not? Morgan Stanley raising the price target to $150 from 144, despite apparently this failure to impress as well. Needham raising the target to 145 from 120. It's everywhere here. Truist Securities to 148 from 145. Raymond James raising to 140 from 120. Wells Fargo to 165 from 155. Deutsche Bank to 115 from 100. So obviously they're more circumspect. But the fact of the matter is, every single analyst that I can see is upticking their valuation. In fact, what's the latest one? This one's just come across the wire literally in the last half an hour. Baird to 150 from 120. So someone out there says fail to impress. Clearly the analysts were not unimpressed. Anyway, the rest of the market I think is as fascinating. We can talk a lot about GDP later on as well, but that was a bulwark, a support for the market elsewhere.
Yeah, it certainly was, right? So you saw the Nasdaq actually take a little bit of a step backwards as well, then on the back of Nvidia's decline, then some of the tech players as well getting a little bit of a hit. It just shows that leadership that we're getting, or that had definitely led the market higher than out of the mega cap tech stocks, perhaps beginning to wane ever so slightly, but the impact is still there. 40 points then lost for the Nasdaq Composite yesterday, down 0.2%. Pretty much flat stance though for the S&P 500. And guess what? We're still in record territory though for the Dow Jones Industrial. That's up 0.2%. On a weekly basis though, very interestingly, the Nasdaq's actually down so far 2%. Of course, with Friday's numbers still in play, and of course PCE numbers still to focus on stateside, it's the other economic data that has also been interesting to look at, because you have had that revision of the GDP numbers that Steve has just been speaking about as well. Plus you have that initial jobless claims numbers as those fell a little bit as well. So perhaps it doesn't necessarily have to do as much as perhaps the market had anticipated, or how quickly the market had anticipated that cut in interest rates to perhaps come. We started with fears that might be the case, perhaps ending the month on a slightly different picture. As I said, US tech being a key proponent of some of the losses here. And look at that. This was a pretty mixed picture. The Nasdaq went down despite all of this, not necessarily because of all of it as well, though. AMD going down 0.5%. 0.2% weaker for Alphabet. Nvidia was the big one, going down more than 6% then in yesterday's trading. The rest of these tech players, though, still managing to move higher. A lot of these being the hyperscalers. Of course, Apple, very interestingly, as it looks to then be part of the funding round then for OpenAI. Just very interesting conversation I think we'll have around that as well. 1.5% to the good in yesterday's trade. On the Asian market front then, some economic data as well here, particularly out of Japan to really look at. That's because the Tokyo CPI number is up to 2.6% then from the initial 2.2%. That's the highest mark for CPI in Tokyo then since March. Of course, that's used as a bellwether for the rest of the country then as well, and offers the BOJ perhaps more room to tighten its monetary policy. So just over 0.25% higher than for the Nikkei, then 38,468 right now. The Hang Seng Index, nearly 2% to the good. Some of the tech players, they're actually managing to find some positive numbers there as well, with the Shanghai Composite 1.33% better off than some real movement higher than in that Friday trading session. And US futures, as I said, rose leading to that PCE number that the market will certainly be looking towards then, just on a month-to-date basis. Of course, today being one of those, the Dow's on track to add 1.2% month-to-date. The Nasdaq, the sole loser of the three then, so far down around 0.5%. But it looks like we could start the day slightly positive, Steve.
Yeah, look, super data on the economic front if you were looking elsewhere yesterday. The US economic front second quarter GDP growth was revised higher to 3%. This is robust consumer spending, which you know and I know is responsible for about 2/3 of the US economy. It kept growing. It was faster than anticipated. The labour market, initial jobless claims, they fell. All right, all of you think we're having a cataclysmic jobs event going on. They actually fell, the jobless claims, by 2,000 last week, coming in lower than expected at 231,000. So, I'm not saying that it was a stunning piece of data. I'm just saying it was solid rather than hysterical like you were at the start of the month, a lot of you. Anyway, Thursday's strong data added to expectations. The Fed has room. Well, I'm not quite sure about this one. Room to begin paring back, or presumably that would say you have less room if it's strong data. But anyway, room to pare back interest rates from next month. But continued resilience in the economy likely won't see it swing for a 50 basis point cut from the off. Again, who of you over there thought it was 50 basis points? I kept hearing it. Anyway, investors are pricing in just a 1 in 3 chance that the Fed goes for 50 versus 2/3 chance it will opt for a standard 25 next time round. All eyes on the July PCE index data, a snapshot of what American consumers are paying for goods and services that serves as the Fed's preferred inflation gauge. The data is expected to show little change in recent trends. The headline prints coming in at 0.2% on the month and 2.5% on the year. The core prints, which exclude food and energy, i.e. the useful stuff, are expected to come in up to 0.2% on the month to 2.7% year on year. There's so much to talk about with Manfred Abraham, who is the CEO of Yonder Consulting. So let's do that now. Manfred, so many things to chat about as well. I don't know. You choose. Do you want to start off on the broader economy or Nvidia? Here you go. I'll ask you a question on either.
Good morning. Let's start. I think when you talk just about the economy, full stop, the interesting thing from a consumer perspective seems like consumers under pressure, no question. Inflation is still around, not as high as it was, but there seems to be an underlying desire to spend, which when you look across the retail results, they all seem, or a lot of them seem slightly better than expected.
Yeah, look, a great economist about 20 years ago, early in my career, said never, ever underestimate the ability of the British and American consumer to outspend in very, very tough times as well. And I think that's fairly true. But look, people are still getting pay rises. In the United Kingdom, for instance, we still got 5.5%, 6% wage inflation, which is enough to keep the wall from the door on inflation that is actually only around about 2% now. So in terms of the ability to spend and spending power of your average American, it's still pretty much maintained in a near full employment environment, isn't it?
Yeah, but you can see that the way people are spending seems to have a bit changed. Look, let's go to Walmart. Why not? Value seems to have become even more important. Always a big word in US retail. But then you look at it seems like people that want a slightly higher spending are going to Walmart, spending probably a little bit more than the average spender at Walmart used to be. And you look at Dollar General, for example, that has a lower income household, they are not doing as well. So there's like change in who can spend and who is wanting to spend in the environment, and also spending on other things than just groceries. So it's like going into other areas like beauty and apparel.
So look, we've had reassuring employment data in the last 24 hours. We're all on tenterhooks for the early September payroll figure as well. But by and large, what I think you're saying is some of the retailers are doing pretty well still, despite concerns about the pricing environment, the margin environment, and the presidential candidate from the Democrats saying that there's a bit of price gouging going on and she needs to address that. But the truth of the matter is, I don't see anything dramatic going on that actually sparks fears of recessionary environment, or am I wrong? Does it look like a soft landing or not, Manfred?
Well, I'm not an economist, so big words on that front. But I'm with you on this. I also see more of a soft landing, but I don't see any of the signs that would worry me about this. And I'm more going by how are people behaving in the shopping environment, and they seem to still want to shop. So, and all the economic data that you've just talked about suggests that yes, it will be okay.
Manfred, is Nvidia 16% off its all-time high? It's down 5% this quarter, but it's still up 137% year to date. is there perhaps this worry that the AI story is getting a bit long in the tooth, or have fundamentals changed somewhat here?
It's a very interesting question. We haven't really seen the impact of AI. It's more there's big potential for AI driving lots of changes in a lot of different areas on product development and faster go-to-market possibilities. But we haven't seen it yet. A lot of companies are spending a lot of money on it and not seeing the result yet. The story itself has been very prominent without seeing the result. So I think when you say, is it getting a bit long in the tooth? Probably this story is, but because we haven't seen the results, I do think you'll see interesting stories emerging out of AI over the next year that will show its positive impact on the economy.
Yeah, so now it becomes a big question mark about the rest of the market then, because if Nvidia is unable to lead as it has over the last couple of years or so, can the 493 then deliver?
One is if you look at the backbone of AI versus what AI will be able to do to all the different industries delivering, that is what I would be looking at, is what is AI going to drive and change of productivity and other areas in all the organizations that apply it successfully into the mix. I think that is what I would be looking at rather than the different suppliers of it.
Manfred, we have to leave it there. Excellent conversation. Thank you very much indeed for joining us bright and early this morning. We appreciate your comments as well. Manfred Abraham, who is the CEO of Yonder Consulting. Inflation in Germany fell to its lowest level for 3 years in August. The harmonised figure coming in at exactly 2%. That was better than expected and well below July's reading of 2.6%. It's quite volatile, isn't it? Declining inflation was largely helped by a more than 5% drop in energy costs, according to the government's stats body. We're going to get preliminary inflation data for the euro area later this morning. Forecasters are looking for 2.2%. Such a reading could go towards convincing the ECB to cut rates for a second time at its September meeting. Elsewhere, the Bundesbank's Joachim Nagel is urging the ECB to be careful and not to rush to cut rates too quickly. The German central bank president said that even with inflation easing to target, price stability cannot yet be taken for granted. What's coming up on the show? Well,
Vice President Kamala Harris sat down for her first interview since taking over the top of the Democratic Party ticket. We'll give you the latest on that interview and what was said. Plus, Apple and Nvidia reportedly in talks to join OpenAI's new funding round, which could yield a $100 billion valuation for the ChatGPT maker. We'll have more later. And U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan holds a surprise meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. And he wraps up a visit to Beijing. We'll bring you the latest on the trade front in a conversation with Alicia Garcia Herrero. That's the senior fellow at Bruegel.
CNBC Connect is back in Bangkok, Thailand. Join the world's top entrepreneurs and C-suite executives for an invite-only leadership retreat. On the agenda, powering innovation and growth in Asia. Is AI transforming industries and creating opportunities? And get insights on building sustainable and resilient businesses. Be part of Managing Asia Live. Network and join an interactive brainstorm session. CNBC Connect, powering innovation and growth in Asia on September 4. Register now.
Vice President Kamala Harris has sat down for her first interview since securing the Democratic nomination. Speaking to CNN alongside running mate Tim Walz, the interview comes as the race for the White House heats up, with both campaigns ramping up their efforts to reach voters. NBC's Bree Jackson has the latest from Washington.
Vice President Kamala Harris and running mate Tim Walz in the hot seat during their first sit-down interview. The high-stakes discussion covering issues ranging from foreign policy to the economy.
One of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class.
And the child tax credit is one we know that reduces childhood poverty by a third. We did it in Minnesota to have a federal partner in this. Unbelievable, I think, in the impact that we can make.
Harris facing pressure about her stance on issues appearing to shift since her 2020 presidential run.
My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border.
The vice president touting the accomplishments of the Biden-Harris administration and sharing details about the phone call where she learned the president was ending his re-election bid.
I asked him, "Are you sure?" And he said yes.
Since the 59-year-old moved to the top of the Democratic ticket, the presidential race has tightened. Former President Trump stumping in Michigan and Wisconsin, speaking to NBC News about a range of issues, including IVF.
We're going for all Americans that get it, all Americans that need it. So we're going to be paying for that treatment, or we're going to be mandating that the insurance company pay.
Trump slamming his political opponents during a campaign event.
She destroyed San Francisco. She destroyed California. And we're not going to let it destroy our country. I'll tell you, it's not going to happen.
Both campaigns making their case to voters with less than 10 weeks until Election Day. In Washington, Bree Jackson, NBC News.
Well, the latest polls show a neck-and-neck race for the White House. A national poll of likely voters by Suffolk University for USA Today gives Harris actually a 5-point lead. Now, that's within the margin of error. A Fox News poll for Sunbelt states puts Harris and Trump within the margin of error in 4 critical, crucial swing states. Let's have a look at it. I'll spend a bit of time on this one. What's it? Harris 50-49 in Arizona. North Carolina swinging the opposite way by a similar margin. A minor, as I say, within the margin of error, gains, improvements in Georgia and Nevada for Harris. The 2 candidates are also effectively tied in a new Ipsos poll for Reuters, where registered voters were asked who had a better approach for the economy and jobs. Trump 3 percentage points ahead. Really interesting plea here, actually, I would say, rather than anything else, from the Republican vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance. He's publicly called on tech billionaire Peter Thiel to, quote, get off the sidelines and back the GOP's bid for the White House. In an interview with the Financial Times, Vance said Thiel has been exhausted by politics, that he really, though, would be really exhausted if Harris enters the White House. Thiel backed Trump's 2016 campaign and Vance's 2022 Senate run, but has not supported any candidates in this cycle. Oh, anyway, I think we had a fascinating interview out of Venice.
We certainly did. The upcoming U.S. election was a hot topic then at the DVF Awards in Venice. CNBC's Tanya Breyer caught up with Diane von Furstenberg and former DVF Award honoree Oprah Winfrey and began by asking why they think Kamala Harris should become the next U.S. president.
She should be president of the United States for this moment in time where decency, honor, and respect, particularly for other women and other women's bodies and their rights, is on the line. And I think that for this particular moment that we all are sharing in our historical journey for women's rights and women's reproductive rights, Kamala Harris is the answer. And I think that she's going to make a fantastic president. And I think that when she does, there will be weeping and joyful cheering all over the world for what it means that the daughter of a Jamaican immigrant and an Indian immigrant could become president of the United States. It's essentially the story of what the American dream can mean. And so when Kamala Harris becomes president of the United States, it means anything is possible in the world.
Diane, do you think she has a chance to win?
Absolutely. I think she
You know, it was unexpected for all of us, and everyone was so depressed, and then all of a sudden this happened, and life force, and intelligence, and caring, and compassionate, but with intelligence, and laughing, and the way she presented herself. So I really, really, really wanted to happen, and it shows that, yes, anything can happen, because it's the light at the end who always pushes the darkness away. That's why she should be president.
What do you feel, Oprah, are the biggest challenges facing women and girls today? What are you most concerned about?
I'm most concerned about the ability to continue to make choices for yourself and your life. You know, I've spoken my whole career about people being able to live their best lives, and you know, did shows about it, created a magazine around it. There is no best life if you don't have choice over your own reproductive self. So I think that's major for right now, and if we can just get that fixed, we'll be doing a lot for women in the world.
Are you surprised that women are even facing that kind of choice?
Totally. I mean, I'm a baby boomer. I mean, we thought we had invented freedom, and we had made and part of the liberation. It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking, and unacceptable.
And that is why it's so good to bring women together for an event such as DVF Awards, because it allows women collectively to understand the power that we hold individually. And I think wherever women gather, there is a sense of, wow, we really are more powerful than we imagined, and we can do great things in the world.
Thank you for listening to Squawk Box Europe Express.
For more market-moving news, you can head to CNBC.com.
Or join us again on the show with Steve Sedgwick, Karen Cho, and myself, Arabile Kumete, weekdays on CNBC.